I have found understanding how nature and evolution works helpful in a number of ways. Most importantly, it's helped me deal with my realities more effectively and make difficult choices. When I began to look at reality through the perspective of figuring out how it really works instead of thinking things should be different, I realized that most everything that at first seemed bad to me, like rainy days, weaknesses, and even death, was because I held preconceived notions of what I personally wanted. But hopefully, everybody had a great Easter weekend. Officially, it's still public holiday here in Australia, but because it's Monday, we're going to do a reading anyway. I was out camping, but I am back now. I managed to charge my phone finally, which was a bit of a challenge. So I was without my phone, which is completely fine when you're camping. But now that I am back, let's get back into Principles by Ray Dalio. We've been starting to read his life principles and his ideas and philosophies on how life works. We're up to 1.6. And good morning to Mladen, by the way, as well. I saw that he typed in good morning to everybody on the Zoom. Let's get into it. 1.6, Understanding Nature's Practical Lessons. Good morning to everybody on Bigo. I will be back to you all a little bit later. Let's do some reading first, and then I will check in and say hello to everybody that sent something or said something. I have found understanding how nature and evolution works helpful in a number of ways. Most importantly, it's helped me deal with my realities more effectively and make difficult choices. When I began to look at reality through the perspective of figuring out how it really works instead of thinking things should be different, I realized that most everything that at first seemed bad to me, like rainy days, weaknesses, and even death, was because I held preconceived notions of what I personally wanted. With time, I learned that my initial reaction was because I had put whatever I was reacting to in the context of the fact that reality is built to optimize for the whole rather than for me. And that is so absolutely true. When you think about it, we have our own desires and needs and wants. And when we focus on those, we get ourselves into a bit of, oh, I'm not sure what that is. We get ourselves into a bit of trouble. When we have an idea of how something is going to go and it doesn't go the way that we want to, then we get really upset. Whereas really, we don't really need to, because everything is just happening the way it is, and it's just how it is, and it's meant to be that way, and it's completely okay. And there's nothing really bad with that. When the weather is bad, we think that it's bad because we're looking from our perspective and we can't go out. We're going to get wet, and all of these different things. But in reality, the earth needs water. And so if it never rained, then there would be no trees outside, and the birds would die, and we would die, everything would die. And so what we see and what we perceive from our perspective as something bad isn't really bad at all. And if that's the case for rain, then wouldn't that also be the case for everything else? We just can't see what the purpose is, but there is a purpose behind everything. So when our car breaks down, when something else happens, I very often end up getting behind slower drivers. And I don't break the speed limit, but sometimes you might accidentally go over just slightly as you're focused on what is happening on the road. Or if you're overtaking, you might go a little bit faster just to be able to make sure that you can overtake. But if you have a slow driver in front of you, that might be annoying from your perspective, but there might be a police car just behind you and you haven't realized. And if you were going too fast, they would pull you over. But because you have that slower driver in front of you, you're not able to speed, you can't pass them. And so you are kept safe from that speeding ticket that you would otherwise receive. So there are different angles to be able to look at things that we might not be looking at them from, and that prevents us from being able to see good things in things that we perceive as bad. Very interesting indeed. Okay, A, maximize your evolution. Earlier, I mentioned that the unique abilities of thinking logically, abstractly, and from a higher level are carried out in structures located in the neocortex. These parts of the brain are more developed in humans and allow us to reflect on ourselves and direct our own evolution. Because we are capable of conscious memory-based learning, we can evolve further and faster than any other species, changing not just across generations, but within our own lifetimes. This constant drive towards learning and improvement makes getting better innately enjoyable and getting better fast exhilarating. Though most people think that they are striving to get the things, toys, bigger houses, money, status, etc., that will get them happy. For most people, those things don't supply anywhere near the long-term satisfaction that getting better at something does. Once we get the things we are striving for, we rarely remain satisfied with them. The things are just the bait. Chasing after them forces us to evolve, and that is the evolution, and not the rewards themselves that matter to us and to those around us. This means that for most people, success is struggling and evolving as effectively as possible. For example, learning rapidly about oneself and one's environment, and then changing to improve. And it is indeed true that it is very often just the journey that brings most of the enjoyment. We think that it's going to be the toys and everything else at the end. But I think that very often, and it comes back to the first part as well, it has more to do with the journey and actually being a part of nature. The more we detach ourselves from being a part of nature, the more challenges we have. So if we are never in nature, if we never go to a park, if we never see a tree, if we spend most of our time indoors, then that's going to be really challenging. And so we strive for something. And maybe for most people, rather than the toys and all of that, it is the freedom to be able to have the time to go out into nature and enjoy. So, for example, one of the best days most people have is when they have created time freedom, or when they have the time freedom from their job, and then they go to the beach, or they go to a national park, or they go for a walk, or they do this, or they do something in nature. And so that is the ultimate reward. And it's the journey of being able to create that free time, that idea that we can get better, that idea that we can strive for something. And that as we're doing that, and as we're fighting against the struggles and the challenges of achieving that goal, that's where the enjoyment lies. So we need to find something, we need to find a vocation, we need to find something where we're contributing to society, which brings us enjoyment. And when we do that, that's when that striving brings us joy on the journey, and that gives us the time to do things that bring us closer to nature. So that's one way, potentially, of looking at it. And it may not necessarily be the toys and the other gadgets, but the car might make it easier for us to get to the beach. The car might make it easier for us to go to the national park. And the house is something that helps us to appreciate the luxuries that we have. When you go out camping and it's very rough, then when you come home, you have a different perspective and a different feeling around the house. It is natural that it should be this way because of the law of diminishing returns. Consider what acquiring money is like. People who earn so much that they derive little or no marginal gains from it will experience negative consequences, as with any other form of excess like gluttony. And there's actually a study that proved that once you reach about 300,000, let's say in this case Australian dollars, so you can do the conversion and figure out how much that is in your currency. But once you reach about 300,000 Australian dollars, anything beyond that doesn't bring any more happiness. So if you are earning less than that, then earning more will bring you happiness to a certain degree. It will give you a better lifestyle. It will bring you peace of mind. It will give you all of these different things. But once you get past 300,000, it no longer does that. And it becomes really difficult to spend that much in a year. So there are people that I have met who earn a lot more than that, but they say that they cannot spend more than that 300,000 in a year. So yes, unless you're buying new toys all the time, but once you have all the toys that you want, once you've gotten to a certain stage, the amount that you're going to be spending on a yearly basis probably won't exceed that 300,000. And then they take all the rest and start investing it and make even more, which is really weird because it's contradictory to the necessity. But once they reach that, they make more, but they are still only spending $300,000 a year. And that extra doesn't bring them extra happiness. So yes, they might be motivated to make sure that they have something for their family when they pass on, or all these different other things. And there's lots of different things that you can create with it. but it no longer becomes the driving force, the driving factor for what you're actually striving for. It becomes other things. It might be more time in nature. It might be something else. It might be contributing and philanthropy and giving back and all of those different things, instead of this constant chase after the money. If they are intellectually healthy, they will begin seeking something new, or seeking new depths in something old, and they will get stronger in the process. As Freud put it, love and work are the cornerstones of our humanness. The work doesn't necessarily have to be a job, though I believe it's generally better if it is a job. It can be any kind of long-term challenge that leads to personal improvement. As you might have guessed, I believe that the need to have meaningful work is connected to man's innate desire to improve. And relationships, and hopefully that's the right page, or 2 pages stuck together, natural connection to others that make us relevant to each other and to society more broadly. B, remember, no pain, no gain. Realizing that we innately want to evolve and that the other stuff we are going after, while nice, won't sustain our happiness. But I think there's also something important to state about that. And that is that if you are more humble around it, then you're going to enjoy something for longer. So if you have a toy and you use it in a very conscious way and you have a purpose for it and you know why you wanted it in the first place and you know that you're going to be using it long term. So let's say that you get a nice car. And the reason you get that nice car is because it has very good safety features and whatever else it is you might want to do. But it also takes you to the place where you can go and commune with nature, for example. So in this case, the car is going to have a much longer value to you, and it also depends, I suppose, on how you value it. So some people look at something and go, oh, now I'm bored with it. But if you are more mindful, if you're somebody who meditates and is the more mindful type of person, the more spiritual kind of person, then you can look at that car from a different perspective and you can say, I am still enjoying this car for a longer period of time because, I'm still grateful that it's taking me to the beach. I'm still grateful that it's taking me to the national park. I'm grateful that I can use it for X, Y, and Z. So I think that's where, for me, the distinction would certainly lie. So this has helped me focus on my goals of evolving and contributing to evolution in my own infinitely small way, because we spoke earlier about the fact that our lives don't really matter on the larger scale. Yes, we have an influence on what is happening right now. And yes, if we didn't exist, the whole history of humanity would be different. But the point being that it's really infinitely small when we compare it to the whole of everything's existence in that sense. While we don't like pain, everything that nature made has a purpose. So nature gave us pain for a purpose. So what is its purpose? It alerts us and helps direct us. C. It is a fundamental law of nature that in order to gain strength, one has to push one's limits, which is painful. As Carl Jung put it, man needs difficulties. They are necessary for health. Yet most people instinctively avoid pain. This is true whether we are talking about building the body, weightlifting, or the mind, frustration, mental struggle, embarrassment, shame, and especially true when people confront the harsh reality of their own imperfections. So there is pain in the world, and there is a reason why there is pain. And animals don't really have an issue with it. And I was actually fascinated. I was having a look at I think it was an ibis a couple of days ago. And I was sitting in this park and I was watching these birds, and there are healthy birds and they had no issues. And these healthy birds were just walking and picking up food and doing what they needed to do. And there was another bird that had a limp and it had an injured foot. And as I was observing this bird, rather than the bird complaining to somebody about it or complaining to the other birds about it, or rather than just sitting in the corner and crying and lamenting its life and thinking about the fact that there is nothing it can do about all of this bad circumstances that it's got, this bird was just limping around and still picking up the food and getting on with it and not really having any issues with it. So the bird may not have the capacity to think about complaining or crying in the corner or whatever else it is that humans do. this bird was just getting on with it. And it realizes that there is pain, and it's using that pain to keep driving itself forward. It doesn't really have any issues with what is going on in the world. So yes, there is pain, and pain is the bird getting a signal that there is something wrong with it, and it is just using that to change its behavior so it doesn't injure its foot further. It just uses that signal in order to be able to keep going, but doing it in a slightly different way to be able to make sure that it can survive and that it can continue on. And the bird isn't going to make an issue of that pain. The bird just understands that the pain has a purpose. That purpose is to make sure that it doesn't overpressure, put too much pressure on that other foot. And so it changes its behavior, it continues on, and it just does what it needs to do instinctually. Whereas as humans, very often, I think we do a little bit of the opposite. We will complain about the pain, we will talk about the pain, we will say how unfair it is that we have this pain, rather than just using it as a symbol that, okay, we have an issue, we need to find a solution around it, and it is nature helping us. We see it as nature being against us, but really it's just nature helping us. But we have created this perception and this idea that nature is against us and that everything is working against us. And if we can let go of that a little bit, life becomes a lot easier, because now we can see that pain for what it is, which is nature telling us where we need to focus and where we need to make change so that we can continue and still get to where we want to go. So if we have an issue with, a health issue, that health issue is then telling us that we need to make some changes. If we make the changes, then we can continue our lives. Then we can continue with the things that we were working on. And rather than it holding us back and us thinking about it and it causing us to stop thinking and stop doing things, it allows us to continue on. And that is the purpose of that pain. So it's really good if you can see it from that point of view. Okay, we might leave it at that. We are at 1.7 for next time, and that's going to be pain plus reflection equals progress. So we're going to continue on a little bit more with that pain, and we might see that Ray Dalio is going to say something similar to what I just mentioned, but we will not know until tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to seeing you again tomorrow for another reading. I want to say thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. And there's lots of little hearts and other things that were going on in the Bigo, and I'm going to get back to the Bigo in just a second. But before I go, I wanted to quickly let you know that if you enjoyed this reading and if you would like to read together with me the rest of the book, then you can go to the Passive Cash Flow Club, and you can find us there on YouTube. Make sure that you subscribe, because I also take your questions and turn those into videos to answer your financial wealth creation, passive income, etc. questions. So feel free to go to YouTube, watch the replays, and watch the replays of the other books that I've read as well. I've read Rich Dad Poor Dad and The Art of Thinking Clearly, and I'd love to know what you'd like me to read next as well. And yes, so make sure you subscribe, because you'll be notified when the next video comes out, and it might be the answer to one of your questions if you ask a question, or it might be the answer to a question that will actually help you to achieve something that you might have been struggling with. To ask a question, you can go to Instagram and you can send me a message there. And Mladen has voted for the book Fake, which is a book by Robert Kiyosaki as well. So we can definitely look into that. So that is one that we can look into. And if anybody else has other suggestions, we'll see what other suggestions come in, and then we can read them if they fit the topics that I usually discuss. Okay, and once you're at Instagram, you can ask your questions. You can also let me know that you'd like to be a part of the Cash Flow Club and Play Cash Flow. And we have an online simulator which takes it to a whole new level, which allows you to learn about real estate and business and stocks and all different kinds of investing methodologies. And we'll run you through that. So we are going to start doing it slightly differently, where we'll run you through and we'll teach you individual elements of that, and then you can combine the whole And it allows you to then not only learn how to do it, but it will prepare you and will teach you some skills and different other things so that you can also implement it in real life. One of my pet peeves was when people would come and play at my cafe, and they would play the game, and I'd ask them what they did throughout the week now that they'd learned all of these amazing new things. Excuse me. And very often they would come back and say that they'd done nothing. So I made it my mission to help people to not just play the game and understand the concepts, but to actually figure out and take it in baby steps to take it into real life as well. And for those who are already investing, to take it to a whole new level, because there are smarter and more efficient ways of doing things, and you will learn about those and you'll be able to implement those in real life when you come and join us. So we would love to have you there. So reach out on Instagram, let me know that you are interested, and I can get my VA, my virtual assistant, to send you the details. So I'm going to start heading off. It was great having you today. Thank you so much for joining. I really love having your company in the morning for the readings. We do these every morning at 8 a.m. Sydney time. So I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. And before I go, remember to make the switch to unlock your rich, because if you keep doing everything the same way, you will get the same results. If you make the switch, that is where you can start creating that rich that you might not have right now.